Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tonight, I've got a story pulled straight from the depths of Reddit. The kind that starts slow, quiet, almost harmless, and it tightens its grip and refuses to let go. It's unsettling, it's deeply personal, and once you hear it, you won't forget it. So get comfortable, turn the lights down, and let's begin. My ex was a serial cheater. The first time I saw the woman standing in the lobby of my office, she wasn't hiding. She was holding a latte, wearing a smirk that looked like it had been carved out of ice. She didn't ask for my department. She didn't ask my name. She looked me up and down and said, "He told me you were the quiet type." Then she walked back out into the rain. That was Monday. By Wednesday, there was another woman. Younger, restless eyes that twitched when she spoke. She was sitting on the hood of my car in the driveway, waiting for me to get home. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She just held up her phone and showed me a photo of him, asleep in our bed. Our bed, with the Egyptian cotton sheets I'd spent 3 months saving for. "I'm not here to fight you," she whispered. Her voice trembled with a strange mix of pity and triumph. I just wanted to see the woman who thinks she can change a ghost. I walked past her and into the house, my heart a dead weight in my chest. I was that girl, the one who believed in the fix. I thought if I loved him hard enough, if I was available 3 times a day, every day, I could fill the holes in his soul. But when I stepped into the bedroom, the air felt wrong. For years, his appetite had been a weapon. A riot act, he read me if I even looked tired. Now, he wouldn't even look at me. He sat on the edge of the mattress, his back turned. A rigid wall of flesh and secrets. When I reached out, he flinched. "Don't touch me," he snapped, his voice sharp enough to draw blood. He didn't just stop the intimacy. He stopped all contact. No hugs. No accidental brushes in the hallway. Nothing. It was a reprieve I'd secretly prayed for. But the suddenness of it felt like a cold front before a hurricane. Then he said the sentence that shattered what was left of my delusions. "I think you should start sleeping in the guest room," he said, still not looking at me. "I've been drooling a lot lately. It's disgusting. You wouldn't want to be near it." I stood in the doorway, staring at the back of his head. Drooling? This was a man who spent 40 minutes on his hair every morning. He wasn't drooling. He was building a barricade. And then I saw it. The burner phone he'd left vibrating on a nightstand. A message lit up the screen. The clinic called. "Results are in. Tell her today, or I will." In that moment, the drool excuse stopped sounding ridiculous. It sounded like a death sentence. I didn't go to the guest room. Instead, I waited until the rhythmic, heavy sound of his breathing signaled he was out. Then I reached for his phone. My fingers were shaking so hard, I almost dropped it against the hardwood. The screen was locked, but the notifications were still rolling in like a relentless tide. It wasn't just the clinic. It was a flurry of messages from a group chat titled The Monday Club. I recognized the avatars immediately. The woman from my lobby and the girl from my driveway. "Did you tell the wife yet?" The first one read, "If you don't give us the contact info for her doctor, we're going to the police. This isn't just cheating anymore, you coward. It's a crime." I felt a cold sweat break out across my neck. I looked at him, the man I'd spent years trying to save, and for the first time, he didn't look like a project. He looked like a predator who had finally run out of places to hide. I moved to the bathroom and locked the door, my breath coming in jagged gasps. I pulled up my own medical portal on my phone, my mind racing through every riot act encounter from the last month. Then I saw it. Tucked inside his vanity mirror was a small, orange pill bottle with the label partially clawed off. It wasn't for drooling. It was a heavy-duty antiviral, the kind prescribed for a flare-up so aggressive it was physically visible. The drool wasn't saliva. He had been so reckless with his rotating cast of women that he'd contracted something that wasn't just a secret. It was a liability. He wasn't keeping me out of the bed to be kind. He was keeping me away because he knew that if I got tested today, the timeline would lead straight back to him, and he'd lose the house, the car, and the good guy reputation he used to hunt his next victims. I heard a soft thud against the bathroom door. He was awake. "Honey," his voice came through the wood, sickeningly sweet, the way it always sounded right before he flipped the switch. "I thought I told you to go to the guest room. I don't want you seeing me like this. I'm really sick." "How sick?" I whispered, clutching the pill bottle so hard the plastic groaned. It's just a flu, babe. But the doctor said it's highly contagious. Just stay in there. I'm gonna go get some water. I heard his footsteps retreat toward the kitchen, but they didn't stop at the fridge. I heard the distinct click of the front door deadbolt being engaged from the outside. He wasn't getting water. He was locking me in. The silence in the house was heavier than the darkness. I stood in that cramped bathroom, staring at my reflection. The face of a woman who had traded her dignity for the hope of a changed man, only to find herself trapped in a biohazard of his making. I tried the door. Locked. Not just the deadbolt on the front door. He had jammed the bathroom handle from the outside while I was distracted by the pill bottle. My phone buzzed again. A private number. I answered, pressing the speaker tight to my ear. "Get out of the house," a voice hissed. It was the woman from the lobby. The ice in her tone was gone, replaced by something jagged. Panicked. "He's not at the fridge," she said. "And he's not getting water. He's in the garage. He's loading your car." Loading it with what? I whispered. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Everything," she said. "Your jewelry. Your laptop. The safe from the closet." Then she paused. "He told the girl in the driveway that you were the one who brought it home. That you ruined us." My stomach dropped. "He's going to leave you in that house with the empty bottles. And a signed confession he's been forging for weeks." Her voice cracked. "He's making you patient zero for his disaster." That's when I understood. The riot acts. The yelling. The way he made me feel unstable for saying no. It hadn't been anger. It had been rehearsal. He wasn't just a cheater. He was a social assassin. He was building a story where I was the villain, so he could walk away as the tragic survivor. I looked at the bathroom window. High, narrow, overlooking the side yard where the trash can sat. I didn't have a choice. I stood on the toilet, fingers clawing at the latch. The faint scent of the orange pill bottle still clinging to my hands. As I kicked out the screen, I heard the garage door groan open, then the sound that hollowed me out. The engine of my car, the one I paid the insurance on, roared to life. He wasn't just leaving. He was erasing me. I forced myself through the narrow opening, skin tearing against the frame, and dropped into the wet mulch below. I didn't run for the street. I ran for the garage. I saw him in the driver's seat, his face lit by the dashboard glow. He looked calm, peaceful even. He was checking his hair in the rearview mirror, adjusting a stray strand, while my entire life sat packed in the trunk behind him. I reached into the shadows of the workbench and grabbed the heavy, rusted garden shears. I didn't want to hurt him. I wanted to stop the car, but when I stepped into the headlights, he didn't look surprised. He smiled, the same smile he gave me on our first date. Only this time, it didn't reach his eyes, and it didn't hide what his hand was doing. He was reaching for the gear shift, putting the car in drive, pointed straight at me. I stood my ground as the headlights blinded me, the engine's roar filling the narrow driveway. He didn't flinch. He still thought I was the girl who would step aside, the one who would apologize for standing in the path of his destruction. But as the tires screeched against the concrete, two sets of high beams rounded the corner of the street, then another, boxing him in. The two women didn't stay in their cars. They stepped out into the glare, phones raised, recording everything. He slammed on the brakes. The bumper of my own car stopped inches from my knees. He rolled down the window, his face snapping into that practiced mask, the one he used whenever he was cornered. "Babe, get out of the way," he said urgently. "You're having an episode. I'm trying to get your meds." "The meds I found in the bathroom?" I shouted, stepping closer. "The ones for the flu you've been spreading to everyone in this driveway." The woman from the lobby walked up beside me. Her voice was ice. "We called the precinct, Gary, but not about the cheating." She held her phone higher. "We called about the forged medical signatures we found in your work bag. Turns out telling women you're clean while carrying a prescription is a felony in this state." His eyes flicked from me, to them, to the phones. The walls finally closed in. He reached for the door lock. Too late. I jammed the rusted garden shears into the gap of the window. I didn't pull back. I reached in and yanked the keys from the ignition. The heavy keychain clattered against the steering column. "The guest room was a nice touch," I said quietly, leaning in. "So thoughtful." I lowered my voice so only he could hear. "But you forgot something. I paid the phone bill. I've had the log for months. I met his eyes. I wasn't waiting for you to change. I was waiting for you to get sloppy. The sirens crested the hill. Red and blue light washed over the driveway. He tried to start his routine. The shaking voice, the tears, the mentally unstable wife story. It didn't work. The two women stood on either side of the car like pillars. Their videos already uploaded. Their evidence already backed up. They didn't just catch a cheater. They dismantled a predator. As the police led him away in handcuffs, one of the officers handed me my laptop from the trunk. I looked at the woman from the lobby. No smirk this time, just a nod, an understanding of the cost it took for all of us to be standing there. I walked back into my house. The air felt lighter, cleaner. I went to the bedroom, stripped the Egyptian cotton sheets from a bed, and dropped them straight into the trash. I didn't need the guest room anymore. The whole house was mine. He thought he was the architect of my misery. Instead, he became the contractor of his own downfall. Sometimes, loving someone hard enough isn't about saving them. It's about giving them enough rope to finish the job themselves. What you heard was only the beginning. The next story cuts even deeper. Dated him and his best friend got jealous immediately and slept with him multiple times, even called me on his phone in the middle of doing it. I didn't stay to listen, just hung up and told him to call me in the morning. The phone hissed before I even heard her voice. A wet, rhythmic sound. It was 2 in the morning. His contact photo, the one where we're both laughing on the pier, glowed on my nightstand like a neon warning sign. Then came the moan, sharp, deliberate, and then his best friend's voice, whispering straight into the receiver. He's a lot more vocal when you aren't around. She panted the words, letting the sound of skin on skin hit the mic. A sickening, intentional thud. She wasn't just doing it. She was performing. I sat up in bed. The silence of my room felt heavy, like cold air pressing against my chest. My thumb hovered over the red icon. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, a strange clarity settled in, the kind that comes when a fever finally breaks. Call me in the morning, I said calmly, when you're done being a cliche. Then I hung up and turned the phone face down. For months, I'd watched her mark her territory. She was the sister he never had, the one who sat too close on the couch, the one who accidentally left her hair ties in his car. I ignored the sideways glances, the sudden emergencies that ruined our date nights, the ones only he could fix. I told myself I was being mature. I believed that if I stayed steady, his loyalty would win out. But lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, I realized something. She had won a prize. She'd stepped into a trap I didn't even know I was setting. He didn't call at 8 in the morning. He showed up at 10. He looked like he'd crawled out of wreck. Bloodshot eyes, unsteady hands. And 3 feet behind him stood his best friend, smiling, wearing his hoodie. It was a mistake, he stammered, reaching for the screen door. We were drinking, and she was just there, and I don't care about the why, I said, stepping onto the porch. I looked past him, straight at her. She smiled back. Slow, ugly, a smile that said, I took him because I could. I'm actually glad you're both here, I said, keeping my voice even. Because while you were busy recording your little performance last night, I held her gaze. I was looking through the joint account records he forgot I still had access to. The smile slipped. You know, I continued, the one for the investment you two said you were working on together. His body stiffened. He turned to face her, his skin draining of color. What investment? He asked quietly, his voice already breaking. The silence on the porch became deafening. I watched the realization crawl up her throat. She reached up and adjusted the hood of his sweatshirt, a nervous tick that finally betrayed the panic in her eyes. For 10 years, she convinced him she was his ride or die, the only one who truly had his back, and I was just the temporary girl in the way. She made one fatal mistake. She assumed I was blinded by love. I wasn't. I was observant. The crypto mining venture, Gary, I said calmly, leaning against the doorframe. The one she convinced you to sink $40,000 into. He stiffened. The one that supposedly needed a private server, I continued, that only she could manage. He turned to her, his bloodshot eyes begging for a denial. You said the market was down, he whispered. You said we just had to hold. The market isn't down, I said. I pulled the tablet from behind the door and lit the screen. The money never went into a server. I stepped closer. It went into a series of wire transfers to a boutique travel agency and a high-end furniture warehouse, both under her mother's name. His breath hitched. While you were sleeping with her last night, thinking you were finding yourself, she was finalizing the last withdrawal. I turned the screen toward him. Transaction history. Dates. Amounts. I'd started tracking it 3 weeks ago, right after noticing a suspicious IP login on our shared home network. She wasn't just jealous of our relationship. She was jealous of the life he was building with me, because it meant his money was going somewhere she couldn't siphon from. She didn't cry. She didn't apologize. She stepped back, her face hardening into something ugly and venomous. You weren't even supposed to see those accounts, she snapped. You're a parasite. He was mine long before you showed up with your joint accounts and your white picket fence dreams. He was yours. I laughed. It was the most honest sound I'd made in months. He's all yours now, I said, along with the $40,000 hole and a frozen credit line. Her eyes widened. I reported everything to the bank at 3 in the morning, I added calmly, right after I hung up on your little performance. The look of triumph she'd worn on my porch vanished. In its place was panic. She hadn't won a man. She'd stolen a sinking ship. Wait, Gary stammered, reaching for me as the weight of it all finally broke through. You froze the accounts? That's my rent. That's my life. I stepped back into the house and gripped the door handle. No, I said quietly. That's the price of the phone call. The look on her face shifted. It wasn't just panic anymore. It was the realization that she'd walked into a room where the floor was already gone. She lunged for her phone, probably trying to move whatever scraps were left in her mother's accounts. The screen stayed black. I've been working with the bank's fraud department since sunrise. They didn't just freeze the funds. They flagged every device tied to her login. You think you're so smart, she hissed, her voice cracking as she stepped off my porch and onto the lawn. He'll never testify against me. He loves me. We have 10 years of history. She pointed back at me. You're just a girl he used to kill time. I looked at him. My ex. He was sitting on the top step with his head in his hands, looking like a man who had just realized he'd been paying for his own execution. He looked up at her, and for the first time, the spell broke. He didn't see a protector. He saw a parasite. I don't need him to testify, I said calmly, leaning over the railing. I didn't just give the bank the transaction logs. I paused. I gave them the IP addresses. Her breath caught. Remember when you used my laptop to check your email during our last movie night? I continued. You forgot to clear the cache for the shell company login. I tilted my head. Every dollar you moved left a digital footprint, and it leads straight to that furniture warehouse your mom owns. The blood drained from her face. She glanced at her car, then down the street, like she expected sirens to appear out of thin air. The momentum of her victory had turned into a full-speed collision with reality. Gary, tell her, she screamed, spinning on him. Tell her we were going to pay it back. Tell her it was our plan. He looked up slowly. His eyes were empty. There's no plan, Sarah, he said quietly. I thought we were building something. His voice cracked. I thought you cared. He let out a dry, broken laugh. You called her on my phone while we were together. You recorded it. He shook his head. You didn't want me. You wanted her gone so you could finish the job. Something cold settled in my chest. I could have warned him weeks ago. I could have stopped it before it hit 40,000. But I knew the truth. If I had, he would have defended her. Call me jealous. Call me controlling. I had to let her burn his life down, so he'd finally recognize the ashes. The police are already at the warehouse, I said. It was a lie. A clean one. Calculated. They're waiting for the person whose name is on the lease to explain the investment server. She didn't argue. She ran. Her tires screamed as she tore away from the curb, leaving him sitting in the dirt of my driveway. I turned to go inside. He grabbed the hem of my jeans. Please, he whispered. I have nothing left. Help me talk to the bank. I looked down at his hand on my jeans, the same hand that had held hers just hours ago, while she mocked me through a speaker. I didn't yank myself away. I simply stepped back, slowly, until his fingers slid off the denim and hit the porch floor. The silence was absolute. Somewhere down the street, a neighbor's lawnmower droned on, oblivious to the end of a life happening 10 feet away. I already talked to the bank, Gary, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. I told them I had no idea you were using our joint account to fund your best friend's lifestyle. His head snapped up. Hope flickered. I told them, I continued, that I was a victim of your financial negligence. So, you cleared up? He asked quickly. You told him it was all her? No, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. I told him I wanted my half of the original balance returned immediately. His breath caught. And since you authorized her access, I went on, the bank is holding you personally liable for the remaining debt. I watched it sink in. They're not going after her mother's warehouse to protect your credit. I added, they're going after it to satisfy the fraud claim. I filed against you. The color drained from his face. In that moment, he understood. I hadn't just sabotaged his mistress. I had cleanly severed my life from his wreckage and left him to sink with the ship. I wasn't the fixer anymore. I was the auditor. You're ruining me, he whispered. I have nowhere to go. She's gone. The money's gone. I have nothing. You have exactly what you asked for at 2 in the morning, I said, reaching for the door handle. You wanted her. You wanted the thrill. I paused. The thrill is over. The bill is $40,000. Consider it an expensive lesson in loyalty. I stepped inside and closed the door, not dramatically, slowly, letting him hear the final click of the bolt sliding into place. Through the frosted glass, I watched his silhouette slump onto the porch steps. He sat there for a long time, waiting for the girl who loved him hard enough to change him, to come back out and offer comfort. That girl died the moment I heard the first moan on the phone. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and watched through the window as a tow truck pulled up to the curb. I'd called him an hour ago. The car was in my name, and I wasn't about to let him sleep in it. As he argued with the driver, small, frantic, exposed in the morning light, I realized something surprising. I didn't feel angry. I felt light. He lost the girl, the best friend, and the bank account in a single 12-hour span. When you try to play two women against each other, make sure one of them isn't better at math than you are. Have you ever had to be the villain in someone else's story just to save your own? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe for more deep dives into the cost of betrayal. Until next time, guard your heart and keep your passwords stronger.